Welcome to Rhythm and Roots. Lynn and I wanted to talk to each other and to welcome all sorts of thought leaders, preachers, teachers, reachers, people wanting to have conversations on a show called Water to Wine. It's not religion, it's not religious, it's spiritual, it's not high-mindedness, it's engagement. So when we talked about what we wanted to talk about, we came up, Lynn was like, where would you want to start? And I was like, well, I think I know where to start. What do you think? And then you said,
I said, well, what is faith? What's it about? Do you know what, Kevin? The frustration that I have personally, I've been going to church my whole life. And I was just saying this to somebody today. I can't speak for other people, but when I first started going to church when I was younger, I expected to go to church and that they would serve me the whole meal of God. All things God. I thought that was the church's job. That's not how I think now.
Amen.
I think that the church's job is to serve me up an appetizer. And the whole purpose of appetizers is to whet my curiosity, to draw my interest, and to launch me in preparation for the meal. And the meal, in my mind, is my personal relationship with the Lord. And that's not my pastor's responsibility. That's not my mate's responsibility. That's not my friend's responsibility. That's my responsibility. And when you have a relationship with anybody, just like my relationship with you, I call you and I bug you. And, sometimes you don't feel like being bothered, and I don't really care all the time. Sometimes I need you and I just show up. Kevin, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I need about 10 minutes of your time. Can you squeeze me in? And you do. And I think that when I took that approach with God, my relationship with Him really began. Before I knew about Him, I didn't know Him.
Hey.
But now I know Him. I talk to Him all day long whenever I feel like it. Sometimes people are around and sometimes they're not. Sometimes my conversations with Him are audible, and other times it's in my head. But me and Him can communicate that way too. I read the Word because that's a tangible way for me to touch Him. I can see the print. But I think that people get caught up in all these superfluous things that don't matter. What denomination are you? How do you have to dress? Do you really think He cares about that? I
Well,
don't.
let me tell you. So it's even deeper than that for me, because when people say you get what denomination, got to get close with, da, 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 da. But I'm telling you, a good brother preacher friend of mine and I had to have a conversation. He was like, the fact that you support LGBTQ and the fact that you blah, 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 I don't have a problem with none of that. It's the fact that you talk about Mother, Father, God. Because for me, He is my, and I was like, but what about the scripture that said God is not a man, that God would lie, nor the Son of Man that He would deny. But the He's are in there. We just don't know. And, and that's where I think the question was, that people always ask when they get in trouble, or someone's trying to help them, and they know they are a believer. They go, well, where is your faith? And so this conversation came up, and it's like, what is faith? Because we say, where is it? But what is it? Because, like you said, you thought you were supposed to go to church, and God, the church was supposed to serve you up God, like Thanksgiving dinner. And you discover that it's a sandwich every day, right? You discover that it's a constant flow of food and feeding. And in order to get that, you really have to get to, what is it that I believe? What is it that I believe about God? It's like when people, Lynn, this is simple. It's like when people cheat and go across town. God can see you, right? So what does going across town do when God is a very present help, and when God is omnipotent and omniscient? God knows that you're sleeping with somebody in the dark. God knows that you're smoking on the back of the house. So we hide from ourselves, thinking we're hiding from God. And where my faith is often on Sunday at church. What it is a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother level. It's a whole nother engagement.
I was talking today with someone who actually is a preacher's kid, and they said something to me about tithing. Oh, I'm so tired of hearing about tithing, and there are certain faiths that believe if you don't tithe, you're going to hell. So they said to me, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't think you go to hell for not tithing, but let me tell you what I do think." I said, "You know how the word says that it's impossible to please God without faith?" And I think if you look at the reason you wouldn't be tithing, suggests to me that you don't trust him. It's like you don't believe in him. If you believe in him, even if you've got a penny, you're going to try to borrow another penny to go with that so you can give it to him, because you know he's going to multiply it for you. But that's a belief that there's not a contract. There's not a bank that's saying, if you put this on deposit, we're going to give you this back with interest. It's not that. And yet we will put our money in a bank when we know we got a government that's wacko and they could decide they taking all of it. And there's nothing you could do. What are you going to do? At least with God, he has shown up for me in all the years that I've been here. Even when I told myself I was standing alone, I know he got me through. And so if you believe in him, the question not is, do you need to, is why wouldn't you? I think faith is a belief in God. I think that's what I think it is.
And
but maybe it's more than that.
But I think that's what's so beautiful. What is faith? A belief in God. What is that, right? Because the thing you really started out with was, what is that relationship, right? Yep. At the end of the day, if my phone rings at 2:07 a.m. and it says Len Carter, I'm going to answer it, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: when you're going through your own travails, right, you still might say, "Kevin, it's Len," and I'll be like, "Len, I know that your name is saved in my book."
Oh, wow!
I answered the phone because it was you. You don't need to tell me it's you. I answered the phone because it's you. And I think that, because the idea of way afar God works, because we think that explains God's absence when things don't go the way I want. When the truth is, God is a very present help. I'm right here. Then how did I get into that situation? And this is where good relationship comes in. When you say, well, God, if you're right here, not how did that happen to somebody else? Stop trying to mind other people's businesses because you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. Lord, if you right here, how did this happen to me? Because what God will do is say, well, you tell me how this happened to you. You tell me how you got fired from a job. You complained to me every day. You hate it. You tell me how you got home 10 minutes earlier than you would have, and you discovered something was going on in your marriage, but you were praying for clarity in your marriage. You tell me how this happened, because you kept praying that you needed to know, and the ways I tried to show you to save you your sanity or unbreak your heart or give you some clarity you couldn't receive, so you had to get home early. Because I'm right here. The question is not whether or not I'm right here, because you know I am. And if you don't know, then who were you talking to? That's my sermon on Sunday. Who were you talking to? You were crying and talking in your pillow. Who were you talking to? Who were you talking to when you were working out that situation on your job and you didn't turn any music on, or you were on your way to work and didn't want to hear Steve Harvey, you wanted to hear from me. And so you were talking, and then half of the ride, you were quiet. You know I was in the passenger seat. So talk about what you think this is supposed to be, then talk about us. Then talk about us, because you know how we get down.
It's funny that you would say that. I remember years ago, I have a cousin who he's passed now, but he was a minister, and I was going through something. I don't even know what it was now, but I had been praying about it, and I had been asking God to fix it because that used to be how I showed up with him. I would dial his number when I had an assignment to give him, and then I would tell him that I wanted the assignment completed within an hour or two. No, listen, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that. I was like,
If you
look,
really
Lord,
love me, Lord, you'll do this.
yeah, I got something for you to do. It's broken and I need it fixed. And oh, let me tell you how I want you to fix it too, right? So I said to my cousin, how do you know when he answers you that it's him and, and it's not you telling yourself the answer you want? And my cousin looked at me and said, if you have to ask me that question, you're not talking to him enough. I said, why do you say that? He said, when I call, and this was kind of before everybody had caller ID. When I call, I don't announce myself. I say, hey, and you say, hey, Raymond, because you know my voice. And so when you talk to him and he speaks to you, if you spend enough time with him, you'll know his voice. And I thought, that's such a crazy answer. That's not an answer. He said, that's because you ain't talking to him. Start talking to him. Start talking to him on a regular basis. You'll know what he sounds like. You'll know what kinds of things he would say, and you know what kinds of things he would never say. You'll know his voice. I get it now. I didn't get it then because I wasn't putting in the time. It was a friend that I knew about, but not one that I knew.
A God you related to, not God you're in relationship with.
Right.
Because
Right.
that thing is so good because, like I said, I mean, like he said, even for people who I've spoken to before, people who call me and I call them, when they're in trouble, they will identify themselves. And I'm like, now you know I know it's you. Your name comes up. You know I know it's you. You do that thing where you take a beat and pause. You know I know it's you. So to tell me it's you is to say the stuff they say in movies. Lord, I know I ain't talked to you in a while. Lord, it's me, the wayward one. But the God was like, I know that. So you and this whole look up, look, like you're in some soap opera talking out the window. God goes, I'm right here. Talk. I'm right here. And everything you're gonna say, I know all of it. Like as a pastor, all of my associates aren't church members. All the people who know me aren't members of my church. So somebody might be, telling something really good and slip up and curse and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, pastor." I was like, "Listen, whatever it takes for you to get the whole truth out, go ahead and do it." Right? And say, okay. Because again, sometimes in that relationship with God, we think, "Oh, I didn't call you enough. You ain't gonna do it. Oh, I slipped up and prayed the wrong way, said it the wrong way." God was like, "Boy, just shut up and get to the part. Get to the part."
He's not petty, is he?
God's not petty. God is not petty the bell. You tell me, where you been? Where you been?
Wait a minute,
But
but
you
you
know
know
what?
what?
What's funny though? Sorry, what's funny about that when you talk about is so many of the characteristics that people give God, they get from the church, right? Because somebody could be gone for a few weeks, and the first thing some member might say to them is, "Where you been?" And it's like if you read the announcements, you'd know that. If you called me to pray with me, you'd know that. If you actually were a friend of my mama, you said you were, you'd know that, right? Because people still petty, but people ain't come at you with pettiness. It's like, where have you been? Why does that concern you? Because if you were concerned, you would know where I was, right? One of my friends, one of my clergy friends, just said to me earlier today. He said, "Lord have mercy. I know we got a God relationship because every time I look at your name or say I need to call you, my phone rings and it's you." He said, "Every time." But I said, "Is it every time?" No, it's been every time since he just lost his best friend a couple of months ago. And I said, "Well, that's clearly because God is trying to pull us together to be that for each other." And I said, "And you called me today, and it's my best friend's birthday who is ascended to heaven. So stop running from it so you can get on with the assignment God has for you instead of getting lost in the grief."
You
Lord, I'm
said
still going
something.
through.
You said something earlier. You said, "I know it's you because I see your name on caller ID." I wasn't confused about the fact that he knew who I was. I was confused about the fact that I wasn't always sure it was him on the line. Because, when I call you, I dial the number, but I trust that I put in the numbers right. I didn't misdial. And you say hello. You don't usually say Kevin E. Taylor. You don't do that. So as soon as you say, hey, because that's usually how you greet me,
Hey,
I know it's you because I know how you greet me. I know what you sound like. I know your voice. Exactly. You know,
but you also dialed the number.
I did dial the number, but what
So
if I
it's
got
like
the wrong
Diane,
number?
Paula, Redeemer, Kevin. Oh, that's what I mean, Kevin. Lord, when you push the Lord button, the Lord goes, hey, baby, Lord, it's
But,
Lynn.
but I
And
have
God called you,
called.
God knows. Let me tell you, I'm
I
going to
have
tell you a
called.
secret.
I've called and tried to get people before, and I misdialed. I've keyed in the wrong number, right? And then somebody, a strange voice, will answer on the other end, and I don't even say, "Who is this?" I say, "Uh-oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong number." I just know it because I know that ain't a voice I know. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you a quick story.
Okay.
When my mother turned 85 on her 85th birthday, everybody likes round numbers. And so I put out on social media at the time. I was like, hey, everybody, it's Mother Taylor's 85th birthday. So if you have her number, call her. And if you don't, inbox me and I'll give it to you, right? And so generally on her birthday, my mother gets her flowers from me mid-afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock. I can expect to hear from her on her birthday. This 85th birthday, I did not hear from my mother until 11 o'clock that night. And she was like, oh, baby, happy birthday, Mama. Thank you, baby. My flowers, they so pretty and everything's so nice. And people stop by. And she said, and the bishop called and the archbishop called. And then the baby Peanut, she called my son Biscuit because the first time they met, because my son was adopted, the first time they met, she brought a box of Popeye's chicken and it came with a row of biscuits. He had a chicken wing and all the biscuits.
Okay.
So she called him Biscuit. So she
Okay.
said, Biscuit called his mama, blah, 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 blah. And then she said, and then, baby, some girl named Natalie called. Now, is she in the choir or is she on the usher board? I said, Mama, that was Natalie Cole. She said, no, no, no. We talked for about an hour and she just was so nice. And so that couldn't have been Natalie. I said, Mama, did she ask you for your zucchini and squash um, recipe? And she said, sure did. I said, Mama, remember when you met Natalie? She said she was going to have to get that recipe from you. Oh, Lord, Ness baby called me. She said, give me her number so I can call her back. I said, Mama, why? She said, because I didn't know that was her. I said, but Mama, she knew that was you. So the point he was making is you called, the voice you heard, even when your butt dialed, even when you're like, you ain't going to answer, so I'm preparing to figure out which message to leave. So, hey, baby. Well, hey, it's me. I know that. That's why I said, baby. I knew that. But I, I feel like you don't, I don't know. I ain't know it was you because you don't always answer me. Oh, no, I always answer you. You just might not like, see, everybody wants yes or hell no. And a lot of times it's wait. And wait is, I'm working on stuff that ain't got nothing to do with you. I need somebody moved out of the way. Other stuff has got to happen. Somebody else has got to get their prayer answered so that your spot becomes available. So the answer is wait. You came up with now, but you ain't even ready for now. You want the car and ain't got no money for gas or insurance. Calm down. I got to give
You
you a
don't
new
even
job
have
if
your
you want that
license.
car. Huh? Right. You don't have a license. You ain't got a job. So think about these things in decency and right order and understand that I'm not denying you anything except what you want in this childlike manner, right? When I was a child, I thought as a child, I acted as a child, right? I moved like a child. But when I became an adult, I had to put away childish ways. Like, I want it now. And God goes, really? You know you can't be at this job and say you want that job. You can't be in two places at the same time. So if you trust me, you got to leave this job so this job can be here and you be available to it. So tell me how you want to work this out. You can't want your own way and not want to be single. Because half the time when you by yourself, you're wrong. So you know you can be wrong with somebody else. But he needs to treat me the way I want, and I've worked hard enough. Yeah, I get it. I get all that. I get all that. House and never. Every once in a while, you got to be in a relationship with somebody else.
Let me ask you, do you really think that when people hear that question, what is faith? What do you think they're thinking about? Do you think they're thinking
Church,
about,
what is church?
oh, really? Or are they thinking about what is a relationship with God? Or are they talking about what is faith? Listen, I mean, what is belief? Somebody said to me yesterday, um, because I said to them, we're doing an episode on what is faith. And they said, oh, you're talking about kind of like the Peter thing. I was like, well, the what? The Peter thing? What are you talking about, Peter thing? He said, you remember when Christ was walking on the water and Peter said, oh, if it's really you, call me out, let me do it too.
If it would have been you bid me come, and Jesus says one word, come, come. I just
Well,
preached. I
but
preached
I
this 2 weeks
said to
ago.
him, that's the first half of the faith thing. Then remember, Peter got all the way just about to God, and then he started tripping, and he started sinking. And I said, that is a lack of faith. Because if you keep your eyes focused on him, not just literally, but spiritually, if you believe, you must have believed something when you got out of the boat.
And that's the point, Lynn, and that's the point that I brought up in the sermon. You had faith when you saw me and believed it wasn't a dream. You went sleepwalking. You had faith when you asked the question. You had faith when you climbed off the side of a ship onto water. You had faith when you landed on water and didn't sink and walked to me. He got to Jesus and he was like, whoa, this is amazing. And then started to sing. And when Jesus says, why do you doubt? He wasn't questioning his faith. He was saying, you had to have the faith to see me, ask the question, get off the ship, walk towards me, and get here. You were fine until I put you where you asked to be. Then you started tripping. That's that imposter syndrome. That's that I'm not worthy, because it's like, wait, it was supposed to be harder. It was supposed to take more work. And Yana said that with Oprah when they had their fight. She's like, well, why didn't you believe? She said, because I couldn't receive it. I hadn't worked hard enough. She said, well, what did you think it meant? When I sat down in the audience of my own show, she said, I hadn't struggled hard enough. And she was doing the show. She just sabotaged it because she didn't believe that she deserved the thing that she had gotten. And when you haven't done the work and you're in a good relationship, you got to check yourself when you start wanting to check the phones, because you did the work to get rid of the old person, forgive yourself for it, heal from it, make room with yourself, date yourself, bring somebody else to you, fall in love, and now you're with this person. And the second they 20 minutes late, you like, ooh, they cheating. And then they walk in the door with flowers. And then you go, now you got to be cheating because he never brings me flowers. And then he says, happy anniversary, baby. This ain't our anniversary. We got married in June on the 17th. And it's August 19th. He says, but you wanted me to remember every anniversary. This is the anniversary of the day I kissed you the first time. Remember that? You told me to remember significant dates. So you're telling me you didn't remember. And the only way you could, well, he could have cheated. Well, I know. But it's like people who want to be in control so they don't like surprises. So you want to be able to tell me how to love you. And you ain't been doing a good job of it.
Wow. So these kinds of conversations, the ones we're having, where are you supposed to have them? Because
here like this,
because you can't have them in church. You don't have them in Sunday school. You probably don't have them in Bible study either.
We do.
But I think, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so.
No, you question.
I think that this is what he means about fellowship. He wants us to talk in our regular old every day, blue jeans on, raggedy t-shirt, hair uncombed, right? I think he wants us to talk about him to each other. And I don't think it has to be in a formal setting. I don't think he cares about that. That's some people stuff.
And I think that, oh, and let's get back to the original question: what is faith? And you said, what is it that you believe? What are your beliefs? Like, what do you believe? And that's the thing that we really have to, that life allows us grace and mercy and time to unpack. What do I think about myself? What do I think I'm worthy of? What do I think about God? Because those people are like, well, if it did, God wouldn't allow it. God allows us to be human. So if somebody wants to buy up a parcel of land and put a plant there that's going to leak the dyes from the plant into the water supply, that's not God. That is somebody who didn't care enough about people to be concerned about the environment, because what they believe is them making money is more important than anybody else, right? What do you believe? I believe that my best friend's supposed to answer when I call, right? I'm saying, if that's what you believe, and then you step out of the meeting and go, what's wrong? Well, nothing. Well, wait a minute. I'm at work. So if you call me in the middle of the day, it's because something's wrong. And I step out because you made the edict that best friends supposed to answer the phone. If you call me at 12:17, my lunch is at 2. So tell me what's going on. And then they get to the truth. It's like, God dog it, you remembered all that? Yes. I'm your best friend, and there is no hiding from me. And I think that's the same thing about God. Lord, what would you worry? Who would you worry? You need a new job for you to know I'm your provider, or shall I just provide? Boom, and then boom, and then boom. Wait a minute, hold on. What? What do you believe? That God is a very present help in time of trouble. What do you believe? That God can do all things but fail. That God is not a man that God would lie, nor the son of man that God would deny. So God said it, that settles it, right? That's it for me. But when we think about what that means, like your belief system, like, I know God to be a healer, right? And sometimes healing is somebody getting out of the bed and there being no remnants of what they endured. Sometimes healing is, I'm tired, baby. Like, people get scared when grandma says, I'm tired. No, grandma, you can't go. Grandma 94, and she can say she's tired and mean it. And that don't mean she's in pain or angst. I'm just, soon I will be done with the troubles of this world. My grandmother left at 103 years old and said to us, all right, y'all, I'm going on. And we thought she was going to take a nap. She laid in it. And it's a grandmother that survived a car accident where she flew through the window at 98.
Excuse me?
At 98. From the back seat.
Wow.
So when she said, all right, I'm going now. Oh, crap. I see people all the time. Like, I've had to sit with folks who had to engage the room to keep them all right. And they're the patient in the bed. Like, y'all, your grandmama says she's tired. You have to believe that. But I ain't ready for her to go. Why? Is there a conversation you need to have with her? No. But what you mean you're not ready? What you mean you're not ready? She ready. And her ascension ain't got nothing to do with you.
My mom passed when she was 92. And for the last year or so, she would say when I would see her, I said, how you doing, Mom? She'd say, I'm still here. And she would say it like I'm on punishment, right? I'm still here. And so she said it every time I saw her after a while. And so when she did pass, she had conditioned me so that I was okay with it. Yeah, I knew I was going to miss her, but I knew she was finally happy. So she wasn't going to be feeling like I'm still here. She's finally ready to get off the train. She has reached her destination. And I don't know that I would have been as okay with it had she not, she had said, oh, when I leave, I don't want you to get all of, now that wouldn't have done it. She just conditioned me to the point that I knew she was tired of this.
That part.
You know what? I'm done. How come I'm not at home? I've been sitting in this seat too long. I don't like the food on the airplane. get me home, right?
Oh,
And
that's so good, Lynn. Because imagine, think of how impatient we are when we're ready to take off and we get a delay. Like, well, what you put me on the plane for? Can we get off? No. And you be on the plane for 3, 4 hours, and you're like, we could have been there already. And that must be that energy. Like you said,
yeah,
you said 3 score and 10. I thought I'd be gone at 85. Here it is, 88. Lord, why? Lord,
here
why? What
here
do
it
I
is
have to
90
do?
something, and little things ain't working like they used to. And you know what? I don't even want them to work like they used to. I want to go home. You know what I mean? I'm ready to
Absolutely.
go. And so when I got the call that she had transcended, I felt so at peace. And I was kind of shocked that I wasn't like hysterical, but I knew she was ready. And I know that that prize she had been waiting for, counting on, anxious about. Okay, Ma, you got it. You got it. So,
And it's really powerful because my mother um, went home to be with God at 87. And she'd been dealing with congestive heart failure. For long enough to like for me to have to make 2 trips in the same week. When I went the last time, um, I ended up being in the room with her by myself because my brothers were like, "Oh, good, you here? We'll go get some food," and they took her sister to go get some food. And so it was me by myself, the preacher. And the doctor came to take the mask off her so they could put the BiPAP machine on her and do it, with the trach in it. And every time they tried to rehook up the oxygen, which was blowing gale force winds into the lungs of an asthmatic who was just feeling like she was struggling with every push of oxygen because it wasn't the little nostril thing. And then when they finally let her put it back on, she didn't fight, but that's because she had pulled the main nozzle out. And so the doctor said, well, Mrs. Taylor, they took it off, Mrs. Taylor, without this, we need this to keep the gunk out of your blood, they basically said to her. And my mother said, but I'm suffering. I said, well, that's it. Maybe I am here from this space so that I can say, my mother will not suffer. So this will not go back on her. So they take me outside to explain how the toxins in her blood were being basically blown out by this
she
oxygen.
she knew what
She
that meant.
knew. And
Yeah.
so I said, Mama, you all right? You all right? So I explained it to my brothers. And then I think that was Saturday. And I went back and my mother said, the baby, I came back, baby, what you going to preach tomorrow? And I said, oh, I don't know. Well, let me know. It's like, you can go now. Right? And I was like, oh, okay. And then the next day, no, that was Friday because Saturday, my Aunt Christine told me that she was lucid, talking to everybody. Like, and then she said, Christine, her sister, Christine, and she said, am I going to die? And she said, I don't know. What you think, Louise? And my mother said 2 words, not yet. My Aunt Christine told me that on Saturday. I preached not yet on Sunday, shouted until I almost flew off the planet, and my mother died the next day.
Wow.
She died the next day, holding the hand of, wait for it, the man I had introduced her to 20 years before, who was reading her a love letter. And he was a minister. And so he had been in the room 100, 200 times when somebody took their last breath. When her sister and my brother came in, they looked and said, and Aunt Christine said, John, is Louise gone? He said, no, because he knows that last breath. The doctor came in, she was gone. No ugly death, reading her a sweet letter, holding her hand. She slipped on away.
Wow. 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 Wow.
And we talk about, I want to die like Elijah, just be. And then Grandma said, I'm going on. Mama say, nothing.
Well, you know what? I think but they probably didn't live identical either. And so, it's all your own personality. You
No
and
relationship.
hello. And you know what? It's interesting because I I I know you know this about me. I have been reading the Bible cover to cover for a long time, years, like 15. And every year, at the end of the year, I'm done. And I start again in January. And so when I first started doing that, my friends said, "You can't be reading the Bible by yourself." I said, "I'm not." They said, "You're doing it in Bible study?" I said, "No, mm-mm. I'm doing it with him." And they said, "What hymn?" And I said, "The hymn, the big hymn." And they said, "You can't do that."
Capital H.
I said, "Listen, here's the deal. I go to Bible study. I can only talk when I have to ration out my questions because there are other people there, and I got to be respectful of the fact. And I ain't the only one in there. Other people have conversation with him too. I don't have to do that. I can be a spoiled little only child when it's just me and him. And I can get his full attention. Now, the fact that he can do that with everybody else on the planet at the same time is irrelevant. I'm not feeling like I got to wait my turn to talk, or I got to wait my turn for him to answer me after he finishes dealing with Kevin's problem, right? And so she said I couldn't do that. I said, "Well, maybe not." No, maybe not. But he knows me. I'm a different kid than you. I'm a different adult than you. I do everything that's different than you. He knows his children. Just like you got 3 kids, you don't deal with them all the same way. They're different. They're different. And it doesn't mean you love them less. It doesn't mean that what you give one is not as good as what you give another because they receive it differently. He knows his kids. He knew that's what I needed. I still do it. Even if I go to a Bible study, it is never as fulfilling as when it's me and him. And you can't open that book. Well, I know what our next topic is going to be. You can't open that book without his presence. You just can't. It's not possible. I know what the next topic for our next episode is going to be. I want to talk about the Bible. Because
Okay. Well, look, it's funny because I just got an Ethiopian Bible with 88 chapters for the Bible and the Apocrypha. But I've always had a separate copy of the Apocrypha. Right there.
I see it because I have one too. Yeah. But you know what? I want to talk about King James and kind of how Europe kind of spun that story.
Well, and King James, and why King James made a version of the Bible that allowed him to divorce. That was the whole. That was the whole thing, and the rest of it was trapping.
I do want to talk about that. I do.
That's the Lord calling.
No, it's not. He knows we're already talking about him. He don't have to call on the phone.
But sometimes we need to get your attention. But you know, I mean, but what's so great about what you were talking about with Bible study is like, you know, like for me as a pastor, people will say like, "Pastor, would you pray for me? Because I know you can get a prayer through." And I was like, "So can you." But I believe the prayer I'm praying. So you put, "Lord, I know it's been all these conditions, all these caveats, verses. Help. I'm a very present help in time of trouble. Help. What do you need? Huh? Jesus on the main line. Tell them what you want." We always feel like, and that's the stuff that when you ask what I think people hear when they hear what is faith, they think, what is your church relationship? Because people will say to you, you can't read the Bible by yourself. God will give me a single word for a sermon. And before we got Bible Gateway or even a parallel Bible, I would literally break out my King James, my Amplified, my New Living English, my New International Version, and the Message Bible. It's like, I at one time I remember preaching a sermon and had 18 Bibles open at the same time because I needed to see what the word difference. I remember what's the scripture? I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, right? Mm-hmm. And breaking it down so many times and so many ways that we got finally said, you see it there in that version. You all put it together as a sentence. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. When the truth is I can do all things through Christ, period. That strengthens me. Knowing I can do all things through Christ, period. That blessed assurance strengthens me.
You know,
otherwise you're putting the job on Jesus again versus Jesus paid it all. Do it. It's done.
But it was curious to me that you said someone said, Pastor, can you pray for me because you can get through? That's what he believed. That's his faith. His faith was that God wouldn't take his call, that he would only take your call. And the only way you could get a message to him was for you to send it. No. But you know what? I think I'm hopeful that this podcast will inspire people to want to do their own walk. It's not going to look like mine. It's not going to look like yours. It's going to be tailor made for Kevin E. Taylor. It's going to be tailor made for them. And if that happens to just one listener, I'm going to be excited, because I think that's really what it's all about. It's not about all the other stuff. I think the other stuff is some people stuff. That ain't God stuff.
Oh, it absolutely is.
You know, he doesn't care if you're this denomination or that denomination. He just cares if you are with him, right? You know, I have a podcast. It's called Something to Talk About. And I hope that sentiment kind of carries through everything in the network. That, yeah, they'll listen to us. They'll listen to us have a conversation. But I hope that when our episodes are over, they continue the dialogue with their family and their friends, or worst case scenario, with yourself.
Yeah.
You just
alone in a room.
Yeah, keep it going, and feel enriched by his ever presence, you know?
Yeah. I remember somebody was having the same kind of conversation then about, you can get a prayer through because I'm not much. And I ended up showing them the movie Baby Boy. Hello. And there's a point when Tyrese and Omar Gooding, Cuba's younger brother, are running down the street, running from Snoop Dogg. And he says, stop. We got to pray. And they drop to their knees, and he like cusses and prays to God. And I was like, y'all, that is the greatest prayer some people will ever see, because they're so busy trying to have the right language and autocorrect and mimic their mama, sound like the preacher, that they said nothing. People can pray 20-minute prayers and they ask for nothing. Lord, I know thee, Redeemer, the star hanging, Waymaker. What do you want? Right? And so the idea that this young hood dude has a solid enough relationship with God to stop to talk to God while bullets are ringing over his head. You just in a crap relationship with somebody you shouldn't have been with in the first place, and you know it. You're talking about a job you never liked, but it pays your bills, and that's the only reason you're there. And he's in trouble. Bullets ringing over his head, and he trusts God enough to stop and pray. And that the idea of that,
that's faith, ain't it?
If that faith, what ain't? What is? What? Because the whole idea that, one time at my church in D.C., when I was a deacon candidate, I went up to make the announcement, and the amp beside the lectern, in the middle of the church, went, somebody had done something, and I went to make the announcement, and I pointed at it and said, stop, and instantly it stopped. Then we couldn't get service back. We couldn't get service back for the shouting, and because all I said was stop. Because it was like, wait, how did you do that? I didn't do nothing. I believed God when I said it. Some of the greatest services, we had a woman who was the mentor to my bishop in D.C., who had suffered a stroke and was partially paralyzed and now mute. And for years she had been working with a speech pathologist, right? Mm-hmm. And then one Sunday, the bishop came up to us and said, I got something for y'all today, and walked the mic over to her, and she said, hello, Lynn, Denise Carter. That's all we need. That was hello, and literally, people who didn't normally, because they watched God. We witnessed God move. So when she said hello with a voice that was paralyzed and wasn't supposed to ever speak again, it's like, who prayed? It was the bishop? Was it all of us? Was it her? We don't know. We don't need to know. There's God right there in her throat.
Wow.
And so just,
Okay.
you know, I think that, you talk about this when it's you by yourself and that Yolanda Adams song, Open My Heart, alone in a room, it's just me and you. Because you can tell the truth. Because I always tell people, I did a thing, I think it was last year then, was with the congregation. It was say it aloud. So I was having people pray aloud. Say it aloud because you're allowed, right? Say it
Hmm.
aloud because you're allowed. Because I think often, even when we were talking earlier about like the prayers in your head, you know, we think we're thinking what we're thinking, huh? But we sometimes we're not. You say it aloud and go, Lord, no wonder this prayer ain't been answered. I did not ask for anything for me. I was covering everybody else. And everybody else good. You're like, Lord, why have thou forsaken me? I ain't forsake you. You forsook you. You be on your knees for 20 minutes. They ask me for nothing for you. Lord, cover my babies and the grandbabies. And you think you're being a good person. And the truth is, no one, lean on me. No one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. And what I think what believers don't like is free will. Like, Lord, do it. Do what? Do what? Because what you're not going to do is have me do the thing you thought you wanted and then be able to blame it's not going well on me. So tell me what you want.
And you know what? I heard a pastor talk about that. I heard a pastor say, God, somebody was complaining about the fact that God wasn't answering his prayers. And he said, well, what did you tell him? And they had been wishy-washy. They had changed their mind. First it was a little this, and then it was a little that. And then it was maybe, and then maybe not. And so he was like, how do you expect him to answer that? You haven't even gotten your request together yet. So, I just, yeah, I'm liking the fact that we are talking about him and we're not in church and we're not in a church sponsored activity. Um, and don't get me wrong, there is definitely a value to church, but it is not supposed to be everything. And I just hope people get that.
But let me tell you something. When I think I'm trying to remember if I was headed towards from the diaconate to minister is what I think it was. And we had a service at National Holy Convocation where the Archbishop came to open service. He said, there's a heaviness in here. There's a heaviness in here. There's a heaviness in here. And somebody cried out and came to the altar. And the Archbishop said, now somebody over here says they're ready to be ordained. Because that's what we're doing on Sunday. Aren't we ordaining people? He said, yeah, are we ordaining people? So if y'all ready, I need somebody over here in the about to be ordained section to come up here and pray. And one of the, I think it was the deacon candidate, stood up and came to him. He said, all right, anybody else need prayer? And a bunch of people came forward. And he cleared up all of the ordainees. He said, start praying. We had a 3-hour service. The first hour and a half was prayer. Just people, it wasn't one prayer. People. The second half of it was those same people praying and giving God thanks. Not a word was preached, not a song was sung. Archbishop had gotten home and called back and he was like, no, they still in there shouting.
Wow.
That was the service tonight, was to be of service. And there was, because the conviction, Lynn, I'm going to tell you this. The conviction for me as a young student clergyman was to have somebody come to me purposely for prayer and then have that person move and see that there were people who had purposely said, I want prayer and I want it from you. And it was like, well, because the question you ask is, well, what do they see in me that would make them want me to pray? And then God starts rolling that pretty bean footage and goes, remember when? Remember when? Remember? And so you praying and laying hands and praying and speaking over and praying, and the people, and you go, this ain't got nothing to do with me, the person. This has to be do with me and the experience. And they go, if God got you through that, pray for me. And you only know God got me through that because God said, get up there, go on with your little BET life. Go on up there and tell him what I kept you. Go on up there and talk to him about. Go on, tell it. And so, what is faith, y'all? Is not a biblical conversation. It's not a spiritual conversation. It's not a holiness or Pentecostal or Baptist or Catholic or Protestant or Buddhist or Sikh or Jew or Gentile. It's an all of us conversation. Because the truth is, you know, Lynn and I are doing this network because we have faith in each other. We wanted to do the show because we have faith in the conversation and already have people we know who are like, oh, can I come on? Yes, you can. And you can bring a subject with you because that's the point. It's not to script it. It's to ask the question, to be willing to beg the question, what is this about? What is on my heart? What do I need? And in all of that, to be able to ask your brother and your sister and your family, how can you help? Because the truth is, Jesus' first miracle wasn't raising the dead. It wasn't speaking tongues. It was being at a wedding and the water and the wine ran out. And he said, hey, servants, which means the servants knew that they poured water. Now he said, take it to the main table and pour again. And when they poured it again, it was wine. We
And
love it.
the best wine. The
Huh?
best wine.
And I was going to say, and we are here to bear witness to the man saying, not only, I've never seen anybody do this. You saved your best wine for last. I've never tasted a wine like this. The servants are the ones, huh? The people, the wedding parties, the man who made the speech, all these people are thinking, oh, see, this kind of wedding I like. The servants are the ones who know they poured water, and Jesus produced wine. So ask your question. It might sound simple. You might think you're producing water, but you're really pouring out wine. You just got to get it out of the vessel. Trust it enough to pour. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open. And I'm telling y'all, when I discovered that the first 3 lines of each of those 3 scriptures, ask and you shall receive, seek and you will find, knock and the door will open. Down spells ASK. We get stuck because we get stuck in the asking. And Jesus is on the main line. The Redeemer is waiting. The Spirit is waiting for you to just ask. What the answer going to be? Yes, no, or maybe. Yes, no, or wait. Right? And if it's no, we often know, well, I want that. I want that person. No. You sure?
You really don't.
Yeah. Sometimes
No.
So,
I remember.
sometimes you got to get them so you can go, got that. Because sometimes people are like, I got a bad picker. Y'all help. You ain't got a bad picker. You just keep picking with your eyes.
There you go. Listen, I got some more to talk about, but we got to wrap this session up.
We got to wrap this up.
So I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Go pour yourself some water. Watch yourself produce some wine.
Oh, love you.
Love you too, Lynn. Love, be blessed, be well, blessed.
Bye, guys.